have a broader responsibility. We have an obligation to manage these funds differently. And so therefore, we must have the right to invest in a variety of instruments. And so they, 200 years ago, started shifting the nature of our understanding of fiduciary. And today, as Tessa can talk at great length and with great eloquence, institutional pension fund trustees clearly now may consider not only financial return, but also how social and environmental factors affect financial performance and return. And there's increasingly movement in the pension fund space and the endowment space for those investors and fiduciaries to begin really thinking about how do these off-balance sheet liabilities affect financial performance, and how can their investing practices drive social and environmental value and return. The other part of this, too, is that when we talk about fiduciary obligation, a lot of times, again, we just focus on the financial part. We don't really recognize the fact that actually, as fiduciaries, we have a much broader set of responsibilities and obligations. And those have to do with the mission of the institution, ensuring that we're moving ourselves forward and that we're effectively using the resources and tools that we have available to us, and that at different levels of the organization, different folks have various responsibilities and obligations, and all of this really has to be taken into account when we talk about what it means to be a good fiduciary. And then lastly, in contributing to this idea of evolution, come on in, it's okay. I think that this will continue to be driven, and I think in part it gets driven by the demographics, because the millennials, as they are coming up, reject a bifurcated value proposition. Right? They basically reject the idea that the first order of life is to make money and the second order of life is to give it away. They really want to work and live in organizations that are maximizing some level of economic performance at the same time that they're doing good in the world. There's a real kind of shift in mindset around that, and that's being complemented by what I think of as the disgruntled boomers, who are basically folks who are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who are kind of saying, this is it. This is my life, right? This is what it is. This is how much money I probably will make. This is how much money I've made. And it's just not about the money, at the end of the day. There's other things. There's other parts of a legacy that I want to leave to the next generation. And these two conversations are coming together in a very interesting way, because in essence what it's doing is calling into question this bifurcated value proposition, this idea that you can disaggregate consideration of value in investing in an organizational management, and that either you join the nonprofit sector and you do good, but you don't drive economic performance, or you join the for-profit sector and you do well, and you drive economic value and performance, but not social returns. And really, at the end of the day, I would argue that all organizations are fundamentally whole, that they all have within them various levels of economic, social, and environmental value components that really interact and play and can be managed and maximized over time, and that this is really what we should be focusing on. And again, in a lot of the conversations around social entrepreneurship and cooperatives and this and that, a lot of the discussion tends to focus on the legality and the structure and why we can't do things, right? And yet, I'm always kind of amused, because these are all self-imposed limitations that we've created. There's nothing that we've created in terms of legal form or structure that can't be modified, changed, or evolved. And so in the States, for example, obviously you have nonprofit organizations and you have for-profit LLC corporations, but you're also seeing a whole host of hybrid entities kind of move through the center. And of course in Canada you have a large cooperatives movement that really has kind of been in that middle space for a long time. So I think there's a lot of examples as you look around the world about how people are actually moving beyond the bifurcation and getting out of a zero-sum dissonance toward trying to capture and pursue greater aspects of value creation. And again, I think that what we're talking about is the recognition that there's really two parts to the conversation. One having to do with the power of environmental and social factors to affect financial return. So in the case of Generation Investment Management, looking at publicly traded corporations, they would say it's not a direct impact investment as much as a consideration of how various environmental and social factors will affect the business model of the firm that we're analyzing. And it's not a moral question, right? This is not screened investing that I'm talking about here. It's not socially responsible anything, although there's a place for that. What the new conversation is moving toward is really a sense of saying, okay, if you're a transnational company and you don't understand pandemics and you're employing people in South Asia and Africa, you're going to be in trouble as a company. And if you're an insurance firm and you're not thinking about how global climate change is going to affect the liability, the off-balance sheet liability for your investments, you're going to be in trouble. And again, it's not that you're looking for managers that have figured it out and have the right answer, as much as management that's kind of leaning forward on the balls of its feet and not going to be caught back on its heels. And the bet is, over time, more and more of these types of factors will come home to roost. And those investors who are long-term asset owners, as opposed to, like if you're a day trader and all you care about is, the number at the end of the day, this probably isn't for you. Most of us are not day traders. Most of us institutionally, in terms of endowments, in terms of our personal wealth and assets, are playing to a 10 to 20 to 30 to 50 year time horizon. And if that's what your orientation is, then you've got to pay attention to the off-balance sheet things that don't come up in traditional financial analytics. So you have to create, and we'll go into this a little bit, a host of metrics that are enhanced analytics that help you kind of get a better wraparound relative to the value proposition, which translates down to this idea of the power of financial assets to basically generate social and environmental impacts. And in this case, I'm thinking more in terms of philanthropy, impact investing, direct private equity investing. There's a host of, again, instruments and vehicles. But the idea is it's the leverage and combination of these two parts that give you total portfolio performance with multiple returns, with maximizing total blended value. And that's what we're trying to move toward here. So as we think about capital, again, we've been basically sold on this idea of a bifurcated value proposition for capital. So what you do is rape, pillage, and philanthropy. Okay? You make as much money as you can, however you can make it, and then you spend a chunk of time at the end of your life giving it away to try to make up in some part for the damage you did in the pursuit of that wealth, right? And so what we do is we create these philanthropic institutions.